Why, hello there. Welcome to episode 4 or episode 5 of, come on, evangelical nutters, put your money where your mouth is. At least put your mouth where your mouth is. You know, you guys go around shooting off, blah, 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 blah. And then I say, okay, you want to do a hangout, we'll do a hangout. Set aside a little bit of time, and you wait, and you wait. They don't show. So yeah, tonight's hangout starts 8 o'clock Mountain Time, or 8:15, or 8:30. 8:45. I'm not really inclined to wait around a whole bunch. Just to recap for the people who would care, this whole discussion started like a month ago when MG42 Pillbox was shooting off his mouth about his grand knowledge about the Kent Hovind convictions. I mean, at the time there was a 2006 conviction. At the time we'd been talking about this a while ago, there was a more recent which not correctly referred to as a conviction. It was a guilty finding by a jury, which has now been set aside by the judge that Pillbox has been going around saying is, you know, just determined to get Hovind in jail for the rest of his life because apparently she's in some pedophile pornography ring or something. According to Pillbox, she's an evil person. After the finding of guilt by the jury, she went back and reviewed a motion that she had stood down, you know, waiting to see, well, the jury might not convict him anyway, in which case I won't have to deal with this motion. But now that the jury had recommended a conviction, she went in and said, okay, I'll go take a look at this motion. And then she went, yeah, good point. And threw out the case. So Hovind's 2015 conviction on one charge of contempt of court is now set aside. By the judge, who the evangelical nutters will tell you is a terrible, dark, evil, you know, pornography something person. So anyway, a couple of things have changed in that situation. Pillbox pops up again to say, hey, let's wrap, let's do a hangout, let's talk about this. You know, last month we were going to do this hangout. He doesn't show. Who was going to stand in for him? Arcane was going to show up. I don't recall. He didn't show up either. Was it Arcane? Anyone remember? Whoever it was, he didn't show up either. But Jade, some people know her as Jade or Becky or Miliagris Felis, had shown up. We had a great conversation. Teacher and administrator showed up, and yeah, we just had a really good sort of calm conversation about some of the issues in that hangout. There's a fascinating discussion about the lease pendants process and messing up people's land titles. And then we all went on and just had a nice, happy evening. So anyway, Pillbox wants to talk about this today. We had a little chat earlier in the day, and then he says, yeah, we'll do this, but for some reason he's occupied. So anyway, yeah, let's do 10 minutes. Just talk for 10 minutes. I might make it 11. Gus.
Octai.
How the heck are you doing? I think this is our second time to actually get a chance face to face. I'm glad you popped in. What's holding up your Friday evening?
I tell you, I want to tell you a story. Can I tell you a story? It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Kent Hovind, but since you don't have MG Pillbox here,
no talk.
You know,
I've done.
Unless you've gotten fed up and stuffed him in a steamer trunk somewhere, and you've mailed him to Thailand with a couple of girly magazines and some styrofoam popcorn.
Yeah. No, I'm done that topic. There's not even any follow-up observations. The guy can't show up. He can't show up. So yeah, what have you got that's more interesting?
So I had Matt Slick in my midnight salon. Now, I don't know if you know that I run a series of evening hangouts. They start at about 11 o'clock, usually between 11 o'clock and midnight, and they're called the Midnight Salon. They're open to anybody. This isn't a shameless plug, by the way. This is just to let you know some context.
Okay, well, just to clarify, so is that when you say, I'm going to know the answer to this, because when somebody gives a time and then doesn't have the decency to clarify that there's time zones, that is always somebody in Eastern. Only people in the Eastern time zone do that. So when you say 11 o'clock, what time did you say? 11 o'clock?
Yeah. So yeah, okay. Eastern time zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
only people in the East do that.
Does anybody live outside? Does anybody live outside the Eastern time zone? I'm just curious.
You know, at least 5% of the population of Canada lives outside of Ontario, for example. But please.
You know, we have our own version of flyover states. We call them Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. So. Now,
okay,
where was I before?
Where was I before
I was upbraided here? But anyway, so I between about 11 o'clock and midnight Eastern Standard Time, I usually try running something that I call the Midnight Salon.
Gotta stop you there.
Yeah.
Eastern Daylight Time.
All right, now you're just being pedantic.
I am.
I'm starting to get the feeling you don't want me to tell my story, Hogtie.
I do want to hear it.
Okay.
I do want to hear it. But
I
would
run
like it to be
something
technically
called the
correct.
Midnight Salon that runs approximately at midnight. You figure out which midnight I'm talking about.
Okay.
Now,
I'm with you now. I'm up to
so
speed.
last night at last night's Midnight Salon, I got a strange guest. I got Matt Slick, the Matt Slick, except no substitutes. I got Matt Slick, and the reason I got Matt Slick is I don't know if you're familiar with a fellow named Matt Yester. Hog? No? Okay. Well, Matt Yester is apparently one of Matt Slick's disciples. So much so that when he argues, he sounds an awful lot like Matt Slick. Like he's adopted many of his mannerisms, many of his phraseologies, to the point where one of the ways that, since you can't talk to a Calvinist with him trying to crawl up your skin, I figured I'd hand him back a little of the same, and essentially get on his nerves, particularly when he did that thing that Calvinists do, where they tell you what you're thinking, tell you what's wrong with you, tell you about your life, because they can see through to your soul, because God speaks to them special, don't you know? So
exactly, yeah.
So he got into that, and I said, oh, thank you, Reverend Slick. Oh, that's great, Reverend Slick. Well done, Reverend Slick. And so now his mind interpreted this. I know, right? You'd think with a brain like mine, I wouldn't stoop to the low shots. But what do you want from me? I'm just a boy from Ottawa. But eventually, I guess what happened is eventually he rage quit the hangout that we were on. Now, I'm just gonna wait here because Daddy wants to know what his kids are doing.
Yeah, you got a good guess there. No, go ahead. I will. I might have to walk away, but go ahead. I'm
okay.
with you.
Now, originally when we'd gotten into that punch-up, he and I, it was over the fact that when he asked me about my metaphysic, I didn't tell him. I said I fall silent on that because what I wanted him to do was I didn't want him to put me in those boxes that people put you in when they ask you, if you're a dualist, a modalist, a think tankerist, a tuna fisherist, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
I said up thine. You want to figure out what I am? You come and ask me what I am. But apparently, for poor Matt Yester, this was a stopper, and a stopper to the point where he became upset, and so we ended up having a punch up, and this is why I guess this is where a lot of the snark was coming from. And then as I said, I kept saying, well, tell me some more about me, Reverend Slick, and what's wrong with me, Reverend Slick. So anyway, he interpreted this as some sort of calling out of Reverend Slick. First of all, I don't know what it was like in the area, the part of Canada where you grew up, but when I grew up, the concept of calling out was something you did when you wanted to punch somebody in the head. So the whole notion of calling somebody, when people say I'm calling you out, there's a voice in my head that says, oh, good, kill him. He's saying you're allowed to. You know what I mean? So it's always like, I wish you wouldn't use that phrase. I think it's overused, and I think it speaks to testosterone nobody around here actually has. But he said, well, I thought you were calling out Matt Slick, so I figured I'd bring him. And so there I am sitting in my midnight salon, and I'm talking to Count Socula, and the Socolicious one, and first in comes Matt Yester, and I'm like, oh, Matt Yester, well, considering you rage quit the other hangout we were in, welcome. Here's some pizza, some iced tea. Knock yourself out. And then all of a sudden, boop, up comes Matt Slick. But here's the kicker, okay? Like here's the part that put me square in Bizarro world. Matt Slick didn't say anything. He was in the hangout for 25 minutes and he didn't say anything.
Oh, he came in himself.
He spoke. He. By the way, your video to audio is lagging.
It is. Oh, I hate when that happens. I'm actually going to have to turn off my camera for a second here. And I'm sorry. I know I'm kind of because you've got a rhythm in the story. Can you?
I know. I know. You're infamous.
It'll be super quick.
You're an infamous rhythm breaker. You are.
I know. I'm sorry. Hold that thought though. I will be right back.
I'm holding on to it. I'm holding on tight. Well, it's just us and the snail, B.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Hello, lovely.
This is Jade.
Hello, Jade.
That is a turbo snail, by the way.
Oh, I like turbo.
Yeah, that's a turbo snail.
I liked Turbo. Did you ever see Turbo B? It's a kind of a kids movie about
I've heard of it.
a snail that gets like struck by lightning and goes like really fast, and he wants to race in the Formula One.
I thought it was like a snail that did meth or something.
Well, at first he couldn't go very fast, but then he got struck by extra special lightning, and then he wanted to race in the Formula One. You see, because he could go really fast after that. So that was the whole idea behind Turbo.
Got it. Hi, Becky. I've never talked to you before.
No, you haven't. And Becky is actually a fake name. There's a long story behind it. My real name is Jade. J-A-D-E.
Okay.
Yeah. But you can call me Becky. That's okay. That
I
was
am scandalized, I tell you.
What, that I'm using a fake name?
Yes.
Well, everybody calls me B even when I tell them my real name, so I just quit telling people.
Well, a lot of people call me Becky. As a matter of fact, you'll see people go, Becky, Jade, whatever.
That's because she is as nice as a honeybee, and she moves from flower to flower, getting pollen.
But does she have a stinger?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, see? Gotta watch those bees.
Yeah. So now I gotta wait for Hogtie
To get back.
tell the rest of my story.
Tell the story of Slick.
Weirdest encounter with. Oh, there he is.
I'm so sorry about that. But there are some calls, most parents will recognize this, there are some calls that need to be dealt with at that moment.
Certain tone of voice that is...
I've got something caught somewhere under me.
Yeah. But I hope you didn't press on and tell the rest of that story without me. So you're saying...
we held it for you.
Matt Jr., Mini Matt.
Mini Matt, yeah. Micro Matt, yeah. He called Mega Matt.
Oh.
Yeah.
He called Mega Matt, and Mega Matt showed up himself and popped in, and he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Didn't say a word. Now, he did a little bit of chatter in the side chat, which is a bad idea with me when I'm talking to somebody, because I don't know about you, but my brain has enough room for one conversation at a time, and the side chat isn't one of them. But he didn't say much in the side chat except to compliment my voice, which I suppose coming from Matt Slick is a compliment, and to keep asking over and over again what the topic was. And I have a number of particular assholisms that I brought to the hangout with me, and that I wish I could do something about, but I can't. But one of them is that my forebrain gets really impatient with people who pop into a hangout out of nowhere and go, "Stop everything and tell me exactly what's going on." Because to me conversations are a dance. They're a rhythm, right? When you get into a conversation with somebody, it's like a samba, a rumba, and then along comes somebody who stands between you and your partner, and the friggin' record goes, whoop, and they go, "Now tell me everything that's happening." And I sort of go, "Oh, it's so good."
I'm gonna have to stop doing that then.
So, and but the civilized part of my brain goes, "Well, how the hell else are they supposed to know, right?" So it's a constant struggle in my head between the incidental annoyances of the silly-ass parts of my brain and the normal parts of my brain that go, you have to get along with these people. If you want friends, don't you? So anyway, so he came into the hangout and he sat there for about 25 minutes. He didn't say a word, kept asking what the topic was, and when nobody said anything, I don't know, I guess he was starting to get frustrated because nobody was talking to him, because I was talking to Matt Yester, and Matt Yester wasn't letting go of my leg, and I wasn't letting go of his neck. And so eventually the conversation between him and me died down, if only because we kind of got a little bit physical tired, like when you go at somebody here. Eventually, don't go anywhere. I'm not done with you, mister. So, and then eventually we were like, well, we could talk about something else if you want. What do you want to talk about? I know. I think the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup this year. And as soon as we started talking about ice hockey, Matt Slick said, "Sports? Nope, not staying for that." Gone. I'm like,
oh, and he just left.
Yeah, he just took off. So in the entire 25 minutes that Matt Slick was in my hangout, he did not utter a sound. And it was the strangest cameo appearance I've ever seen in my life. I really don't understand why he came.
Yeah, I had a very different prediction for how the story was going to go, because I know that Matt sort of fancies himself a bit of a strategist, right? And I don't know if you remember the scene when from the the 1960s episode, 1968, I think it was the episode of Space Seed, right? The famous origin story for Kanuni and Singh. And there's a point there where they're having dinner together, and they, as a courtesy, they all wore their Class A Federation uniforms. And then Spock ends up having a conversation with Khan. And partway through, Khan gets like this, wait a minute, he realizes he's been maneuvered a little bit, and he says, oh, he turns to Captain Kirk, he says, oh, you're a very clever tactician, you know, having your first officer, you know, go in to sort of do these initial strikes to, you know, to learn my, you know, like, and I think Matt Slick sort of fancies himself that way to a certain extent, this, like, it's all about this war, you know, it's all about this tactical thing, you know, but no, I kind of expect he'll sort of wait. Now, again, I have very limited experience with him. And it was, you know, I've seen a couple of
your experience with him, like first, like, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I watched your experience with him recently, and I thought to myself, Hogtie, you were ass fucked before you walked in that place. I mean, I admire your courage. I do, because you stepped in there, and I mean, here's the, you know what the setup is, right? But I'm going to say it just for the live audience. Here's the setup. You walk into the Bible thumping wingnut. Tim's got his hand on the chicken switch, okay? Yeah. He's got his, and he never hesitates to flick the chicken switch. He's almost so reflexive about it that even Matt Slick from time to time has told him to back it up, which I find interesting because last time I checked it was Tim's show, not Matt's. But that being the case, so you got Tim on the chicken switch. You got Len, who's there to bite your ankles when he doesn't think that that Matt can do, you know, the job. And then you've got Matt basically telling you that you're an idiot. The entire time he's telling you you're stupid. And a number of his interviews have essentially devolved into that. So from my point of view, you were screwed before you went in there, and I admire your courage, but you didn't have a chance. Yeah.
Really no, I knew that. I knew that. I was trying something. I mean, there was a bit of a gamble in it. I'll say something about that first, and then we'll move on. We've got some other people. I'll sort of get them to sort of introduce themselves, and But I do want to say, I mean, and I've listened to both of those hangouts. I was on the one week, I'd asked a very general question there. They were talking about pastoral issues, and I had a question about it. And Slick was just like right there, like, atheist, fresh meat, you know, and he just fancies himself such an intellectual, tough guy, you know. And I thought, I'm going to try something a little different with this, right? I'm not going to treat Matt Slick like G-Man, because that's where the chicken switch, right? As soon as you start going like, okay, you're a fucking idiot. Like, if you treated Matt Slick like the way you would treat a normal human being in normal human conversation, then, like, you would just have to start saying things to him like you say to normal people. Like I told him at one point, I was like, you're being childish. Like, can you just grow up a little bit, you know? But anyway,
and then you get Tim's voice going, hey, can we maybe be a little nicer to people? Yeah. Which case, and if you haven't been driven mad by Matt Slick's condescension, the fact that you're talking to somebody who cannot possibly think as slow as he talks, or he'd still be trying to figure out what he had for breakfast last week, will pretty much seal the deal. Yeah.
But I wanted to try something a little different. Like, again, I went in there to ask that question. I'm not trying to, you know, I wasn't there to be like, oh, I know how to beat Matt Slick. I can totally beat Matt Slick in debate. It wasn't about that. It was about, can you just have a normal conversation? What happens when you just treat these guys in a sort of normal conversation? And, of course, Matt Slick was like, well, we're going to talk about this. Well, by that point, and I had said already, I had to go. I sort of had a few minutes to do this. You know, I take my hangout time like a, I don't know, like going to a strip club. You try to hold your life in balance, right? I mean, I don't watch much TV. I don't do many hours of hangouts. I don't go to strip clubs at all. But think about that. Let's say your hobby was to go to strip clubs, right? You don't want to go to a strip club 7 hours a day, right? You a little once in a while. I don't know why I went to the strip club thing, because I don't even go to strip clubs. But anyway, it's just But the point is, I do hangouts. I set up hangouts, or I go into other people's hangouts, and I say, okay, I'm going to do this for an hour, or I'm going to do this, you know, if it's, you know, once every other week, I'll do a 2 or 3 hour thing, you know, whatever. So I'd already said, like, no, I got to go. Well, he just wouldn't let it go. He kept going, whatever. It kind of kept happening at it. So then I had the whole week to think about, am I going to call him back this week? Am I going to, you know, and I thought, here's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do, so now I'm going to go in, and if this is going to be a discussion, a debate, and here's what I'm going to do. Instead of going in and trying to be like, oh, I'm going to beat Matt Slick. I'm going to show the world that I'm smarter than Matt Slick, like whatever. I'm just going to go in, and here's my goal. I'm going to try to have a normal human conversation with Matt Slick. And to me, that's a win-win, because one of two things is going to happen. he's either going to up his game and he's going to act like a normal human being, in which case you're going to have a normal human conversation that's going to be really, really interesting, because he's a polished apologist. He's not necessarily a knowledgeable one, but he's got a style and he's got a rhythm. And it would be interesting. Like, Matt Slick is no G-man, right? You're actually going to have something to deal with there. That was unlikely, but I'm saying one of two things was going to happen. Either he was going to, you know, sort of man up and have a decent grown-up conversation, which would have been interesting, or more likely, he was just going to act like a loony jackass. In which case, then I could just do what I was doing, just highlight, like, hey, I'm just trying to have a conversation. You know, can we not just have a normal conversation? And just sort of show, like, that's what it's like talking with these guys. So I went in with a bit of a different strategy. I mean, in hindsight, I mean, there's certainly one thing I wish I hadn't done, and that was on the first week I was there when I mentioned very offhandedly about, he keeps talking about the laws of logic, and what he's referring to is these invariant properties, the verities, the very nature of reality, but he's calling it the laws of logic, and it's such a sophomoric gaffe that to me it highlights to everybody who knows anything about this that these guys know nothing. Remember, Matt Slick is their hero in this regard, and he knows nothing. Like, he could not pass like an IP level high school philosophy course if he doesn't understand what the laws of logic actually are. So I'd mentioned it sort of offhandedly and sort of in a way to kind of point out, like, look, this is how off base his understanding of this area is. And then in the week that I had to think about it before calling back, I decided right off the bat, I'm not going down that alley. I'm not going to have a discussion with him about these academic, you know, like navel-gazing type of philosophy things. He wants to ask a question about reality. Let's talk about reality. And I went back and counted 6 times. I said, okay, boring the audience, boring to me. Let's get on and talk about precept. Let's get on and talk about transcendental argument. Let's talk about worldviews. Talk about my worldview. Talk about your worldview. 6 times I said, let's go to that. And then he would just kept bringing it back, you know, kept bringing it back to that same topic. Oh, she's got her camera out. So, well, yeah, I mean the one thing I really wish, just make that point, that's one thing I really wish I'd have done differently, was not raise that issue at all. But by the same token, remember, he approaches every conversation. He admitted himself when I asked him about it. I pointed it out, and he did not deny it at all. His whole point in a conversation is to say, you know what, Gus, you mispronounced that word. You said you said rural. It's not pronounced rural. It's pronounced rural. So therefore, your whole worldview is wrong. Yeah. Like, he will look for the most trivial thing that you're saying that's wrong, and yeah. When he kept asking me, for example, like what he was asking me when he kept saying, do you affirm the laws of logic? What the fuck does it mean to affirm the laws of logic? Whatever. I know what he means. So, you know, at one point I'm like you're not even accepting yes for an answer. At one point I literally asked him, would it help your argument if I changed my answer from yes? You know? So,
yeah. Well, part of the problem I find with these tight box precepts or these tight box Calvinists is that if I just let them take me where they want me to go. I just say whatever, and I say, you know what, you're right. You're absolutely right. I can't argue with your logic. I cannot argue with your logic. You have provided me a flawless Rube Goldberg machine where the little silver ball ends up underneath the mousetrap at the end. Fantastic. Your logic is great. Where's God?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I wish I'd have done.
But that's a problem for them, because the only thing they can do is turn around and say, well, you're asking for empirical evidence for a non-empirical thing. I'm like, that's great. Where's God?
Right.
And this is the only thing that you can do in the face of that, is to say that, oh, you've gone. I can't hear you, man. I can't hear you.
Yeah, but let's. I just don't want to beat this topic up too much. Again, I had sort of set aside some time to do this, and I promised my kids I was going to go do something fun with them here in a few minutes. So I don't want this hangout to be too long. Let's just sort of touch on some issues real quick and make it real lighthearted. And oh, sorry, Pillbox is with us. Okay. Well, let's just not you and me, Gus, just sort of beat up on that whole topic. I just want to say that.
Okay.
I mean, I know how to
move forward.
I know how to deal with the precept weasels, right? And that is. To first off, just highlight, and people heard me say this many times before, shine a bright spotlight on the fact that there is no such thing as the precept argument. If you try to take the precept argument and to frame it into argument style so that there's premises and conclusions, it goes like this. Premise 1, God exists. Like, that's it. They have no, you know, and they will say, well, this doesn't prove God. This isn't the path to God. You start with God. You know, their whole argument, like when you say, okay, show me this precept, show me. The next thing they're going to ask you a question, and it won't be a clarifying question to make sure that you're on the same page about some particular issue to help them guide their argument. There is no argument. All they do is they ask you a bunch of questions in the hope to find some sort of a stumper, and of course there always will be, because there are no complete worldviews. There's always going to be some gaps or even outright errors or internal inconsistencies, and then they say, oh, that's why your worldview is wrong. And you go, okay, well, so what? My worldview's wrong. Who cares? That doesn't go anywhere to proving yours.
Well, you eventually have to do that anyway, whether or not we use your method or my method. I just think my method gets to it quicker.
Well,
it's not to say that my method's better. It just I find it suits my. It keeps me from essentially allowing them to wander me around in circles.
Yeah,
by simply saying,
the problem I had was there was no circles. There was no circle there. I had no chance to even sort of do something with it, because that's why I kept saying, let's get on with it.
Absolutely,
do this.
Absolutely.
Because he kept saying every time it's okay, let's get on with it. He'd say, well, but you said you could prove the laws of logic can change. Yeah. And I'd say, no, I never said the laws of logic can change. Well, yes, you did. No, I didn't. What I said was that. And then the thing is, there's no way, you know, I mean, at some point I would have had to just say, okay, when I said whatever it is I said about laws of logic, I was 100% wrong. I'm sorry, Matt. I was drunk. Like, there's simply no way. And you watch how many times I said, let's talk about something else, and he just, and at one point he even said, okay, so you're a materialist, right? And he goes, yeah, but you said the laws of logic can change. Like, there was no conversation.
I'm surprised that the conversation never reached a point where you said, fine, Matt, what is it that you want from me? Because honestly, I had no idea, you know, like, I don't think either you or I really understood what it was he wanted from you. You know?
Well, no, I do. What I think it is, there's only one thing he wants from those conversations. He's not there to save your soul. He's not there to show the superiority of Christian worldview, to win souls, or to get people to live their lives better. There's nothing about that. His only thing he does in any of those conversations, I watch this happen with Benny Ocean, who also takes the same tack you do on the labels issue, is that he just says, hey, what's your label? You're a materialist, you're a naturalist, you're a solipsist, you're a whateverist, and he says, well, your worldview is wrong. You're illogical. You're being illogical. Therefore, my worldview is right. And smart. Yeah. And there's nothing to do with making you a better person or helping you out in any way. But having said that, so I just want to sort of introduce people as they come in, and this is going to be one of the short.
What?
I just got a crash in some piece of software I wasn't even using. Well, that's awesome. So who would come in? Who got wild echo in here?
Not me.
Patrick. All right.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I got you. Who would come in? So, yeah, Gus had come in.
You still hear it?
Becky. No, well, I had you muted, but you're good.
Okay.
Rose,
yeah, how do we
Pillbox, and
yeah. Huh? Oh, sorry, B. What happened? That's who it was. That's who I was looking for. Rose.
I don't know. She will often drop out for various reasons. It's nothing personal. It's usually got something to do with her kids.
Oh, okay. I was actually even wondering who she was. I heard somebody talk about her in a hangout and say, well, was waiting for whatever. It doesn't matter.
Good. She's good people, though. She's good people. You can stand on her. She's good people.
Oh, good. Pulls a good plow, as they say here. All right.
Dear Lord, Hogtie, you sure do talk a lot, man. Holy shit! You wanted me to come in here about an hour ago, right?
Yeah.
Dear Lord, well, I think you just saved the world. I think we've figured it all out now.
Okay, good. All right. So, what do you got in your mind, Pillbox? You got 5 minutes. What you got?
I don't know. You wanted me to come in here and talk to you. I mean, I guess I could say my favorite atheists are Nadia, Yvette Chambers, and Eve Reel. You know, they're really awesome and special. What's going on with you guys?
Well, not much. Again, I'm not even, like I say, we're just about to go off air. Like, I'm not, you know, I said I had sort of limited time for this, so
all right, I guess the last thing I'll say then, Hogtie, is that, you know, if you guys are talking about Christians who are, you know, not your favorite people on earth, and for some reason you're slipping of the tongue and saying things that aren't true about them, it's called a lie, and that's all there is to it.
Okay,
To say
let's do that then.
and talk shit about Christians.
I want you to tell us what
That's all there is to it. You know, we had a talk earlier, Hogtie. You might as well tell everybody. You know, we talked earlier for about a good 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was it was actually a pretty good conversation. I mean, there were a couple of things that I told you. I kind of hope that interrupting gets dialed down a little bit. But there was something that we identified. In fact, this could be one of the quickest hangouts that you see on YouTube. But I really want to highlight this. If anybody learns anything at all from this erratic, what the hell are we talking about hangout? Let's get to the bottom of this. Pillbox, what is a lie? In your view, what is a lie?
I believe a lie is when you're stating something that's not true and you are implying that it is true. That is a lie to me.
Okay, so what about the circumstances where I honestly believe the thing I'm telling you, right? I want to use a different example before because we were talking about where somebody lived, so it's a bad example. I don't know. Somebody just think of an example. An example is something that where you say something that's wrong.
Well, you got to realize there's a specific context here. The reason why this is such a big deal is that we're talking about human beings in difficult situations. You know, it's actually considered slander as well. If I'm talking about somebody, I'm saying, well, they did this, and it turns out they really didn't, or it turns out that I'm wrong, then I'm not only lying about them, I'm slandering them, and that's why it's such a touchy subject. You know, I do get heated. I get pissed off when people talk shit about certain Christians, you know, specifically Kent Hovind, and I know you guys hate him, but the fact of the matter is that no. The fact of the matter is
you don't get
hold
that.
Hold on,
Relax.
relax.
No, that's a lie.
You guys hate him. Come on.
You just lied. You just lied.
You guys hate him. No, you guys hate him.
Under your definition.
You're going to tell me that you don't hate him?
I do not hate him. Under your definition of a lie, you just lied. And you are bearing false witness against me and against anybody else.
I'm a terrible liar then. So I'm a terrible liar then. Back to the point here. When you're talking about someone that's going through a very difficult situation and you're telling people that they have committed crimes, you actually become the criminal as well. So by doing that, you become a slanderous criminal.
Okay, how do we deal with this lie?
Well, I know you're saying nonsense because you think you come from a monkey. I know it's nonsense to anybody who thinks they come from a monkey. I know. By the way. Okay, all right. Pseudoscience. Yes.
You know what else is slander? Oh, you chicken shit rat fucker, you.
No, because that was it. Like I told you, this is how we deal with Pillbox. Right?
Oh, you kicked him. Oh, you kicked him. I'm sorry. I take it back, Pillbox. I take it back, Pillbox. You're just a slanderer. By the way, Hogtie, I would just like to mention that for somebody so hell-bent for leather on calling people out on slander, maybe he could stop following Carlton Cameray around all over the place and calling him a pedophile. Maybe he could stop doing that. Maybe if he's that interested on slander.
Yeah.
No?
And by the way, and I'm not even going to do the thing of say, oh, we probably shouldn't talk about him while he's out of the room because that's too bad. He had his chance. Now, keep in mind, for the context of the audience, in general, I don't like muting people. I don't kick people. I think that's probably the first guy I've ever actually kicked out of a hangout. But I told him before we went on air, we talked for about a half hour. It was a pretty good conversation. I did tell him that I want to dial back the interrupting a bit, and I want to keep it on topic. I specifically mentioned this thing about how if somebody's talking about something, and then your response is to be, yeah, well, you believe that you're a product of a frog fucking a monkey, then you're gone. I don't want that.
I'm not?
You have a normal grown-up conversation. And I told him straight out, this is the promise I said, I'm not going to mute you. Actually, what I told him was I'm not going to mute you more than twice. And I didn't make it explicit to him because I thought it was funny, that the reason is if I had to mute him twice, he was just going to get ejected. But since he showed up an hour late, and then he comes in and he just decides he can talk over other people, and he cannot address the issues, and he comes in and he's bearing false witness. He came in and told lies about us, and he was given a chance to be corrected on it, and then he wants to start talking about, oh, you think you're monkeys or whatever. Fuck him, he's gone. My kids are out of the room, by the way.
You're trying to say that I'm not the spawn of a monkey and a frog that fuck?
I couldn't tell you. Sorry,
The frog wore a rubber, dude. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
No, you know what? You gave him his shot. You did right by him, and he showed up and he acted dishonorably. And that's the thing. And as far as the whole thing with Kent Hovind, everything that's gone on with Kent Hovind is a matter of public record. None of it is in dispute. None of the facts are in such a way that they're clouded and only the special people can find out what they are. The man is a tax fraud. The man has fundamentally misread the phrase of the Bible that says, "Render unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. Caesar hath decreed that all the world pay tax. Pay your motherly effing taxes already, and stop screwing around."
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is that you can't even have a sensible conversation with him about the nature of the taxes. I mean, I've heard people say, like, I mean, Jade will remember this, where we were talking with Teacher of the Bible, and you know, we found a lot of common ground, right? Because you get somebody who's actually calm in a conversation, and we found a lot of common ground, like the fact that they put a guy in jail for 10 years for this, right? One of the things you'll hear in that hangout that Pillbox claims to have listened to was that Jade and I and Jack and I believe Administrator was on board with this too, all agreed that Kent Hovind's in jail for way too long, right? I even wrote down the timestamp here because, by the way, what had started this whole thing was Pillbox accused Jade of being a perverted liar today, which may or may not be true. I don't know what you do in your private life. You may very well be. I don't know.
According to most of the fundies on here, I'm perverted because I'm a homosexual, so I guess that's okay. But
I want to make clear, online, I do not find you either perverted or a liar.
Well, thank you.
Now, mind you, and it's really too bad that Pillbox just couldn't, like, cinch up his pants and act like a grown-up for 10 minutes, because when we talked today, he made a point that all of a sudden made me go, okay, I get what's going on here now. But although he's lying when he says this, that's the thing that's really ironic about it. When I asked him, like, what do you think a lie is? So let me actually, sorry, Jade, you're going to say something. I didn't give you a chance there, but I want to tell people how this started. He posted this comment on there saying that Jade is a perverted liar, and he gave a timestamp. If you watch that timestamp, it turns out it's not even Jade that's talking for the next 2 minutes. But the next thing that Jade says, she says, Jack had asked a question about, well, so is Hovind still in jail? Like, what about I've read something about these new charges. What is it? And she said, yeah. And we've been talking about money laundering for about 10 minutes. And then she says, well, this time it wasn't tax evasion. They got him on, or they were trying to charge him with money laundering. And then something. And I said, no, hold on. I got to stop you there. That's not what it was. It wasn't money laundering. And she says, did I say money laundering? Like, with general confusion. Like, what did I say? Oh, no, it wasn't that. It was they were trying to get him on mail fraud, but they didn't get him on mail fraud, but they did get him on contempt of court. And by the way, that's all true, right? There were no charges of money laundering.
Absolutely.
Right. Just for clarifying for people who weren't following it, there's no charges of money laundering. They charged him with contempt of court and with mail fraud. The jury came forward with a finding of guilt on the contempt and no finding on the mail charge.
What was that other charge I think they tried to lay on him because he kept going to bank machines and taking out just less than the legal limit.
Yeah, that's in 2006. That was the structuring transaction.
Structuring.
Yeah, so
okay.
he's and there's no doubt on that. I mean, Pillbox will tell you that it's all bullshit. Pillbox will even tell you, that's what started this whole thing a month ago, was that Pillbox will tell you that the IRS has actually apologized to Hovind for putting him in jail for structuring. That's just bullshit.
Yeah,
it's just, he does no.
I'm sure they did.
I asked him for a source on, like, where is this apology, and he posted as a source a line from a letter to the editor that some woman in Garland, Texas, had submitted to some online news magazine based on something she read in usnews.com, which was a report on the February 2nd testimony of the IRS commissioner before the House Ways and Means Committee. I actually go and get the testimony before the House Ways and Means Committee and read what the IRS commissioner actually said. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take, Sally Housecoat from Garland, Texas's letter to the editor of, that's what he thinks the source is. Anyway, so yeah, we done a hangout. We covered all those issues. So yeah, this last round, he was charged with contempt of court, mail fraud. The jury came forward with a finding of guilt on contempt of court and no finding on mail fraud. Now, since that hangout that we had, it turns out the judge, who everybody says, remember Pillbox and that Lone Star guy and everybody else says, that this judge is determined to keep Hovind in jail for the rest of Hovind's life. And she's part of some pedophile pornography ring or something. And she went and reviewed a motion after this jury had come back with this finding and said, no, this is a bad charge, and she threw out the contempt charge. So Hovind's done. As soon as he's done his sentence from 2006, he's free to go. He's finished his sentence. So anyway, I'm losing my point here quite rapidly. So we were talking about all these different charges and whatnot. We've been talking about money laundering. Jade says, yeah, well, at this time, it wasn't tax evasion, it was money laundering. I say, no, it wasn't money laundering. She goes, did I say money laundering? Sorry, I meant it was they tried mail fraud, but they didn't get him on it. Instead, they got him on contempt of court. So this is what Pillbox considers a perverted lie and refers to her as a person a perverted liar. That's her character. That's her nature. And then when you ask him about it, he goes, well, that wasn't true. She said he was convicted on mail fraud or on whatever, money laundering, and he wasn't. And he wasn't. So therefore, yeah, she did for, 3 seconds of a conversation before she corrected herself, or I corrected, and she immediately said, yeah, sorry, I misspoke. And he refers to that as she's a perverted liar.
Yeah, one of these days he's going to shoot his mouth off in those areas that you don't shoot your mouth off, and someone's going to sue the living shit out of him. Because when you call people pedophiles and stuff out in the open, like, he's right, that is slander, and slander is action. See, up here in Canada, we don't get that our courts aren't as usable by the public as they are down in the States. Down in the States, somebody one of these days is going to drop the good Lord's own lawsuit on him for calling him a pedophile, because that's serious stuff. That's really serious stuff. Like that kind of thing drives people to swing from the rafters with a rope on. You know what I mean? Like, and that's, you don't throw stuff like that around. You don't throw sexual perversion charges around. I would very much like to see him get the pantsuit right off him, to the point where he is literally forced into a trailer somewhere to smarten up as his own penance. Like, I would love to see economic medievalism imposed on him until he learns what you are and aren't allowed to call somebody, in the open.
Yeah. Well, the way that this went today, okay, I'd seen that comment where he said that you referred to her as Becky, and she sometimes comes in hangouts, as a perverted liar for having said this. And I went, and actually, of course, it's not even, this is the other thing too, is they don't even give you the courtesy, and not just Pillbox, a lot of these guys do it. They don't even just say, like, look, at this timestamp, this person said this, but that's not true. In fact, this other thing is true. They don't do that. They'll throw up a timestamp and they'll say, yeah, that person's a perverted liar, and that's it. And you have to go hunt down, like, okay, what is this elaborate perverted lie? So yeah, so he says that, and then I posted in response, like, what? That's not even her talking; it's somebody else. And then in fact, she said this, and then she immediately said, oh, sorry, I misspoke. Like, where's this lie? And then Jade had jumped in and actually put a comment on there too. And I had said in response, and I stand by this, that I'm not, as I've met so many of these radical evangelicals that take bearing false witness, right? So it's in the 10 Commandments, which they always like, oh, we got to keep the 10 Commandments in the courthouse. The country's going to hell in a handbasket because we're taking the 10 Commandments out, right? 10 Commandments got nothing to do with how the American government functions, but whatever. But it's not just that it's in the 10 Commandments, because fit to restate this. When asked by the disciples, what are your commandments for us? He restates some of the 10 Commandments, not all of them. The more secular ones he restates, notably, don't bear false witness against people. And then adds another one that wasn't in the 10 Commandments, the love one another. And this is also restated in the Pauline epistles. I mean, this thing about not bearing false witness should be pretty obvious to people. And I've met so many radical evangelicals who interpret this thing, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. They interpret it to mean, well, my neighbor is my brother or sister in Christ. So for a Christian, not a Christian, these radical evangelicals, anybody who uses the term real Christian generally doesn't, So basically, a real Christian, in their view, a real Christian, it's perfectly fine for them, it would not be acceptable for them to tell a lie that slanders or defames another real Christian. It is, however, acceptable to tell a lie that serves to protect another real Christian. And it's also okay to tell a lie against your physical next-door neighbor as long as they're not a real Christian. Like, basically, let me wrap up on this point, because the other thing too is, what is a real Christian in their view? A real Christian in their view is somebody they get along with. So basically, they interpret that prohibition against bearing false witness against a neighbor quite simply to be, you are allowed to bear false witness against people that you don't like, people that you hate, and you're allowed to lie to protect people that you do like. That's what it boils down to for again, not Christians, for the radical evangelicals like Pillbox and G-Man, Nephilim Free, that whole group. That's their take on it.
But if you divorce the concept of lying from that couching that you just put it in there, and you walked up to them and you said, and instead you use the whole hiding a Jew from the Nazis pounding on doors dilemma, you know, and there are a number of them who say, if you corner them, no, you can't lie. You can't lie to protect these people. You just can't. You're not allowed to lie at all. God says don't lie. And then you sort of go, okay, but let's phase shift into the dilemma, into the situation you were just talking about, and you hold that up to them, and all of a sudden their brain leaks out their ears. Like it's just that I do not understand where the concept came from that it was okay to adopt non-Christian-like behavior when dealing with non-Christians. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah,
and I think in the end it's going to harm the faith.
Yeah, well, it certainly has, but again, it's part of this compression effect. And sorry, let me just make an announcement here. I do want to wrap up in like 5 minutes. Or a couple of people have been in and haven't even spoken at all. I'm sorry, this has not been one of the better organized hangouts. I don't care. This was literally, I was just going to, you know, Pillbox wanted to talk. I said, fine, I'll give him a shot. We'll do the talking. I encourage anyone to open up a hangout, and then people can just sort of do the thing casually. But for me, I'm going to go on and do some other things. So, your last point, Gus, was so good. Where do they get the idea that yeah, it's something, all the good Christian conduct applies to other, you know, your neighbors, your other good Christians? They really have developed this us versus me attitude, and there's scriptural support for that, about this us versus them attitude. I say us versus me, us versus them attitude, where there are people who are saved and there's the rest of the world. You cannot trust them. They're all evil, dark, disgusting people. Not the Jews. You got to be a little careful what you say about the Jews. But you look at John chapter 15, has lots of support for that. You know, people will hate you because they hated me. That's not the actual phrasing of it, but that's how they interpret it. That the only reason, if anybody ever hates you, if some guy ever, like, you know, flips you off, like gives you the finger when you cut him off in traffic, it's because he hates you. Remember that they hated you the way that they hated me.
But by that same token, there's nothing in the Bible that said that Jesus never said, "Thou shalt not be a jackhole," in furtherance of the faith, right?
He said there are places, and they will point to the scripture for you. It says that you're supposed to. And actually, before we went on air, that was something that Pillbox had even pointed out to me. Like when I was like, well, look, I don't know why you guys do this stuff. I don't know. He said, well, I try to help people. Do you feel at all helped by Pillbox? Let's take this quick little poll. Who here feels that MG42 Pillbox cares about them and wants to see good for you?
Not in the least.
I will
He's
go there
there to hear himself talk, and that's about it.
And when he gets mad, he just says that you like Star Wars. Has that happened to anybody else here?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he says evolution or evotards, as he says it. We all like Star Wars. I don't even know what that means and how that helps his argument anyway.
I've never seen Star Wars. I've never seen any of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I would say this, and I want to draw a contrast here too for people who saw Tommy Hall's comment today, which I did not. I had to have it forwarded to me by somebody else because Tommy Hall has me blocked. I will say this. Pillbox hates Jade, right? And it's not that he doesn't like her or that he sort of has some concerns about her or wishes she were different. He fucking hates her, right? Because
Jade's sweet.
Right. Now, the perversion is one thing, but it's not even just that. It's because she doesn't accept Christ as her Lord and Savior. If Jade were simply somebody who did accept Christ as her Lord and Savior, and they saw that she was born again but was struggling with sexuality or whatever.
Did you miss my coming out?
Did you come out?
Yeah, I'm actually a Roman Catholic.
Oh, well, congratulations.
But that makes me even more evil.
That's even worse.
Now you're double shagged.
Yeah.
I know.
They hate Catholics more than they hate atheists. I mean,
and boy, have they been on me since then. But, you know,
was this the coming out thing like 2 months ago or something?
Yes! Yeah, then you missed it.
I did. I didn't. What?
But it doesn't change who I am and what I've said. You know, that's just a belief I have. And it's, you know, I'm still a rational human being. I still consider myself a secular humanist. You know, that's
Here, wait a second. Have you not? Okay. Now I gotta pursue this. Are you?
Yeah.
So the story. I've asked my family members this question too. Do you buy the story? I mean, let's not get into the details of it, right? Christ is the Son of God, died for our sins, rose 3 days later, gives us a road to salvation. That's.
I buy the basic part of it, but there's a lot of parts I don't buy. For example, I don't really think Christ performed all those miracles the way they said he did. I think that was exaggerated later.
Okay, but so the essential story. Okay, and then and is this always like in the whole time? I mean, the first time you and I spoke was I think 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
What's his name? That weird kid introduced us on a Skype call or something.
Yeah.
But this whole time, have you been Catholic? And it just.
Yeah, and the thing is, when I first got on YouTube, I didn't say what I was because I didn't like the fact that people were automatically pigeonholed.
Huh.
And so I just didn't say. And
absolutely.
Everybody assumed that I was an atheist because I'm a rational, thinker and scientific. And it's like I'm like Fiona. That's private. That's.
Well, except that Fiona is out in that regard, and I'm going to tell you something. If that's what you've done, and I'm at a loss to understand why. I will say that this prediction is true because there's always when
I don't believe anybody's going to hell. I'm a universalist.
Okay. Well, a
universalist Catholic?
Wow.
Yeah, believe me, there are a lot of them.
Oh, right.
It's a broad umbrella, yeah. So
yeah, it is a very broad umbrella, and I'm kind of on a fringe.
When I want to know if something is true, right? So, for example, we were talking about the Hovind case. Often we'll talk about like plant biology or, fish sperm, right? Which is more of a Fiona conversation. There's all these different things we talk about the real world. If I want to know something about the real world, and I hear you say something, or I hear Fiona say something about it, or I hear G-Man or Jason Burns or Pillbox, for example, say something. Pillbox said that the IRS commissioner apologized to Kent Hovind, and they say we're wrong. He never committed any crimes at all. So do I believe Pillbox when he says that? The answer is no. Whenever I hear something from you or from Fiona, that's got a leg up, right? That's got up there that like, yes, this is a person who pays attention, does research. There's never any harm in believing something you say because if it's wrong, you're always running around telling people to correct it. But I will say this, I know that Fiona is always kind of seen as like on the other side because she holds theistic belief. And if your concern was that, I think if you're, well, I don't know why you did it that way. What was my point?
Well,
it didn't.
It didn't start off on purpose. I didn't have a concern. That wasn't why I did it. It kind of just evolved. But I refused to say simply because I didn't like the pigeonholing. The minute you said what you were, you were automatically. That was my point.
You're correct. And I would have done so. That was my point. I'm sorry. I'll let you go on. I would have done so.
And there are several other people here on YouTube who are also undisclosed, and a couple of them I know their position. Some of them I don't. Yeah. But it's largely the same thing because you're immediately attacked. Well, most of the time you're immediately attacked for a position you don't hold.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the pigeonholing is pretty bad. And you're right. I would have done that. I think I would have, like so many other people. But the thing is, if anything, it helps broaden an understanding that I've developed over the last few years, and that is we need to stop referring to this as atheist versus Christian.
Yeah.
It's not atheist versus Christian. There's really right thinking and wrong thinking, and as it plays out in this corner of YouTube, it's wacko, radical, evangelical nutters versus everybody else. Like, everybody's welcome at the table. And the thing is, this is the thing that's so weird. Like, they're always like, oh, atheists are so bad. Well, the thing is, atheists, like, what? Fine, a Muslim can come to the table. Like, they get upset when we're nice to a Muslim. But, we're pretty mean to the Muslims who are assholes. Like, to get to that. And there are a few Catholics that are assholes. We're pretty mean to them, too. But,
I live in the middle of Catholic Central.
Well, and part of the reason I did it, too, is at first it was just because I didn't want to be pigeonholed because I was really annoyed. But then I got to a point where people started to know me in the community, and I thought, well, you know what? Since I'm already undisclosed, I'm going to stay undisclosed because I want them to get to know me. And then I'm going to say what I am, and then see if people just totally freak out. and suddenly change their opinion of me. And there are a few who have. There are a few who have, you know, put me over in the I'm a crazy theist. Regardless of what I've said for the last few years, I'm a crazy theist. And I totally the only people I totally blew the mind of was some of our fundies.
Oh yeah, they would explode. They would explode, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm caught on camera here going, what, really? What, really? I mean, the way I kind of missed it, it was a fairly significant event there, and I just missed it. So you got me thinking, oh, really? Well, what do I do with this? And I find I'm straining, like, when did you ever tell me that you were an atheist?
I never did.
I don't think you ever did. It literally never came up. And now I actually, you know, I mean, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect how I assess what you say, because I know how you look into things. I care because I do consider you a friend. I mean, whatever friend means, over this fucking box, whatever.
Me too. Well,
yeah, I know what I mean. So
I'm not trying to convert anybody to anything.
Yeah, it's part of your character, your personality.
Sure, you are. That's part of the conspiracy.
Yeah. But sorry, I thought I heard some. Who's this other guy? Is it Pick Stave? Is that?
Yeah, this is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hog, I just have a question, and I don't mean to be derogatory or disrespectful to anybody. Typically a nice guy. Anyways, but do you when you read the New Testament, do you feel like it's clearly stated and printed that people who do not believe are going to hell?
No, actually, not at all. It does not clearly say that. Oh, you mean? Was that to me or
his opinion? No, Hogtie's opinion. When you read it, do you think it's clearly stated that non-believers will go to hell?
I'm going to say for the most part, no. Revelation is a bit of a different issue. I mean, I really struggle. Revelation is just such a weird kettle of fish. But
it doesn't count. No, it really doesn't. It's apocryphal. The only reason it got in the Bible in the first place because it was popular at the time.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Well, just not to even argue that point, is it? Because I think he's asking sort of my take on it when I read the Bible. One of the things I found helpful is that the New Testament kind of divides fairly neatly, aside from Revelation, into sort of 4 parts. You can sort of do two forks in the road: the Gospels and the Epistles, and then the Epistles are sort of 2 types, and the Gospels there's 2 types. You know, this is synoptic, whatever. Those 4 sections kind of read very differently, and in the Gospels. And I'm trying to think, even in the epistles, boy, I tell you, the evangelicals are gonna lose their minds, and they're gonna say, "Oh, Hogtie doesn't even know this." But no, to me, okay, John 3:16. Let's go to that one. John 3:16, 17, and 18. Let's read the parts that they actually don't mention. They'll give you the John 3:16 quotation, but you got to read 16, 17, 18. That it's very clear in there that people will perish, right? That the gift of salvation is an escape from perishing, that is ceasing to be. And so at least like John's account of his understanding from Jesus, again assuming that any of this stuff really happened, is that animals, plants, people, everybody dies, they perish, they disappear. But you don't have to. There is a path to salvation. And there's a fork in the road for you. You're either going to accept Christ as Son of God, your Lord and Savior, and you will not perish, but instead have everlasting life. Or alternatively, you can stay on the main drag, and you can perish like everybody else. In terms of there being eternal torture and torment and that sort of thing, I don't see that in the sort of New Testament proper. But I don't want to say too much about Revelation, because I don't know. It's at the end.
Well, not only that, if you do read Revelation, or Revelations or whatever, I still refer to it as the Apocalypse of St. John the Divine, because that's the Catholic version. Yeah, and it tells you right in the beginning that this is a letter to the churches of Asia Minor, the 7 churches that existed at that time. So it's a letter to these churches, and it's about what was happening at the time. It's not prophetic. But the fundamentalists who will take other sections of the Bible literally, when they get to Revelation and it tells them it's to the churches at that time, suddenly ignore that part and decide this is all prophecy for the future. When I was in Catholic school, we actually went through the Apocalypse of St. John the Divine and compared it to, oh darn it, the noise, oh drat, who's that? My mind just kind of went for a minute. At the time it was very popular, you know, the guy who had all these problems. Nostradamus. Everybody still there?
Yeah.
Or did I
we're
get lost?
listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we compared it to Nostradamus. And this is in Catholic school. And the point is that you could read anything into Nostradamus, and you could read anything into Revelations or the Apocalypse of St. John the Divine. It's an entertaining read, but, you know, I don't take it seriously at all. And neither do a lot of scholars. Yeah.
Okay. No, because
I'm curious why you asked. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
well, like obviously when I read it, you know, you really have to think really hard whether it's literal, especially or you know, well, especially because of the translations. You know how they in Revelations they state hell, but in the Hebrew text it's the grave, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I see what you're saying on that part, but it just kind of like, for the most part, when you read, you know, the King James version and you read Revelations, you know, it talks about, you know, hell, you know, gnashing of teeth, you know, all I could go on this and then description.
Yeah, but it's all over the top.
Yeah, although I don't necessarily want to explore that. Again, I want that.
Yeah.
You know, again, I apologize. I kind of normally like to let the conversation go kind of organically and stuff, but just in the interest of time and whatnot, it's very easy to sort of have these things kind of blessed. But I do kind of want to wrap up the point about MG's very brief appearance in the Hangout. No, and again, I did while you were asking about that, and you guys were discussing it, I did take a quick look for some resource here I use for this. Because I know there's the Hades, Gehenna, Tartarus, like there's all these different references to it, and just trying to see how many of these things are actually New Testament. And I'm almost inclined to go with the what are they called, consumptionalists or whatever, the ones that say that hell may be an everlasting place, but your time in hell is not everlasting. So I'm sorry. I think it's Mark chapter 10 is the part where I'm thinking of, where it's just like your body dies on earth and then your soul is consumed. Again, I don't necessarily want to turn this into a Bible study right now. We can probably do that.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure.
Hey, go ahead with your point. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to say before, because I know you got to wrap it up and stuff like that. But I actually had conversations with I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, but it's like MPG Mobox, whatever.
Yeah, MG42. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. And yeah, he was pretty militant towards me. So I was acting the same way back to him when we started talking about evolution and punctuated equilibrium and all this bullcrap. And it's funny how he tried to use PE against evolution, but actually it helps support evolution. And if he doesn't believe in it or accept evolution, why would he use something he doesn't accept to? He uses it for his.
Because that's the argument.
No, because he doesn't understand it.
He doesn't understand it at all.
He doesn't understand it, and most of the creationists will go back to the original version of punctuated equilibrium as it was first proposed by Stephen Jay Gould and someone whose name I forget.
Yeah.
And that was a very loose and kind of interpretation, and even when it came out, a lot of people said, well, not exactly, but the concept stayed, it just evolved, so to speak. So what they're thinking of is sort of a magical something appearing suddenly.
Yeah, the punctuation, right, of that equilibrium. But anyways, what I was trying to say is I noticed too that they always try to put the main focal point on evolution as opposed to like discussing the Bible and God. They kind of like shift the burden of proof, and they make you like try to answer all these questions. And I thought that was pretty funny though. I try not, when they talk about evolution, I really don't want to get into it. I try to shift the burden onto them. Or I'm just saying, if I'm having an argument with a militant Christian, pretty much is what I'm, you know, like Arcane and all those other guys.
Well, you've got the same people. You're talking to the same people that are going to tell you that you believe that a frog and a monkey fucked, and you believe that's where you came from.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. They said that right in that comment too, by the way.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is either Hogtie or Becky. When you were talking about the Book of Revelation, okay, years ago, I was in I saw a documentary or something.
Again, I don't want to turn into a Bible study. We just hit the 1 hour mark. So if you got like a really quick question or something that isn't going to derail us into a Bible study, I do kind of want to make a point about why I had Pillbox in here. Yeah. Go ahead.
I heard years ago that there was I don't know, maybe if you've never heard of this, that the Book of Revelations was actually about Alexander the Great when he was conquering the known world. There was something to the effect of that. You never heard that? Okay.
No.
Because that's the only time I ever heard it was in this documentary back, I think it was in the 80s or something, that you know, that certain things meant this because you know, what they knew about the world, and they were actually talking about Alexander the Great and things that he had done.
Right. Well, remember me talking about how in Catholic school we went through Revelation and Nostradamus.
Right.
And the point is that you can go through these things because they're so loose and over the top, and this means this means that you could pretty much predict anything you want.
Yeah.
I could probably go through both of them and predict the computer age. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, okay, so yeah, we'll do other hangouts and stuff on other topics like that. I just let me and actually I just checked to get the timestamp because I'm going to put a comment up on my feed and I'm going to guide people to this timestamp starting now. I'm going to tell you if you missed this entire hangout, trust me, you didn't miss anything. All good people that came, you know, I'm glad, you know, that, I hope somebody opens up another room where they're going to host and everyone's just going to be casual and not like me just cracking the whip and saying, let's just get on with this. Because the reason is, so this is, I want this to be kind of my closing comment on this. The reason is, over the past few months, I've opened the doors a bit more to say, well, I'll talk to Arcane, which I had a great conversation with the guy, but you know, part of it's to say, like, look at how these guys think, you know. I've gone into G-Man hangouts. I've invited G-Man for hangouts. I've invited Pillbox for hangouts. I've talked to the more sort of loony, you know, and when it comes down to it, these guys don't have anything to contribute, right? Like true empiricism is a great example, right? I, like, for an hour sat down with the guy. Okay, do you mean this? Is this what you mean? Okay, well, I can grant that, but then do you mean this? And just have this bizarre, like, what kind of conversation is this? And to the point now where people who follow my feed or watch my channel or anything like that will write to me and say, it's a waste of time talking to these guys. It's a waste of time talking to these guys. And you get this criticism all the time, like, well, why are we giving these guys oxygen? Well, the thing is, they're part of the conversation too. So that means as long as they can act like they're part of the conversation, I'm quite happy to have a conversation with them. Okay? If G-Man's going to act like G-Man, then he can go on to G-Man whatever corner and go be G-Man. I don't care. I don't need that. I'm not interested in that non-conversation. And, you know, Pillbox, like I say, he just had his chance tonight, and I invite other people. I would, again, do what you want to do, but for me, this is going to be the strategy I'm going to use, that if a guy can be civil and have a normal conversation, you're welcome. Come on in, come on and chat. You know, have a decent conversation. But I just now have a zero tolerance on being in a hangout and having somebody say, oh, can everybody check your block list because so-and-so can't come in because someone's got them blocked. No. If you come in, or somebody being in a hangout, G-Man, coming into a hangout and then being like, oh, I don't want to hear from this guy, so I'm going to use the ignore feature so that I've completely gutted the conversation. Like the way children's go, I'm not talking to Jessica anymore. Can you tell Jessica that, like, I'm sorry, get the fuck out of my room. Like that's just my whole attitude with it. So in terms of dealing with those guys, anyone who wants to come into one of my hangouts and have normal grown-up conversation, come on in. That's awesome. But if you want to come in and act like G-Man, you want to come in and act like Pillbox, I'm not going to mute you. You just go.
Have a good night, Hogtie, man. Have a good night.
All right.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
On that, I will close the hangout out and say good night to everybody. Thanks for those who participated, and thanks for those who watched, and especially thanks for those who ignored this whole hangout, except for the last two. So, have a good night, all.
Excellent.